Welcome to Cooperative Conversations, the live stream series where we connect you to the real stories of Australian primary producers who are growing and working together cooperatively. Hi, I'm Pete Lewis, and one way or another, I've been helping Australian farmers tell the great stories of food and fibre production for the past 25 years. And tonight, we've assembled a great gathering of cooperative champions. Indeed, each of our speakers tonight are acknowledged within their industry as champions. So fantastic. If you joined us earlier, you'll know we had a great natter with Doriana Mangili from the Sweeter Banana Cooperation from Carnarvon in Western Australia. And we're delighted that Doriana has been able to stay with us for this roundtable discussion and talk about what it takes to form a cooperative out of adversity, innovate to keep it strong through the tough times and the heavy competition, and particularly tough farming conditions, if not very trying weather conditions. We've heard about the sweat equity that and working together, which seems a perfect jump start into our roundtable discussion tonight on the collective advantage and how primary producers can use the cooperative model to their mutual advantage. And as I said, joining Doriana with us today are a group of agribusiness champions who are working with cooperative farm models right around Australia. We have Brett Kelly, agribusiness consultant, former CEO of two large co-ops in dairy and horticulture, Norco and the Oz Group, very experienced in managing cooperative farming setups. We're joined by another Sandgrover, another West Australian, Basil Lenzo, third generation lobster fisher and the chairman of the Geraldton Fishermen's Co-op. And of course, each week, each episode, we're joined by Melina Morrison, who is the CEO of the Business Council for Cooperatives and Mutuals. Great to see you again, Melina. So thanks everybody once again for your time, and we're going to have a great conversation tonight. But before we start that conversation, if you've got a burning question for our panel tonight, ask away via our chat box, which is located on the right-hand side of this stream. And don't forget, you can also vote for a question via the vote button. So we'll try to get to as many of the most popular questions as we can in the time allowed. So put your thinking caps on and follow the conversation closely and send us a question if you think we need to go there. Doriana, we'll start with you again. Change has been quite a constant over the 30-year life of your cooperative. Tell us briefly what you saw as the collective advantage at the outset.
Initially, it was really marketing and creating a brand and putting the product, all our family-grown farms product together and coming up with a collective amount that could then get a scale that we could reach retailers, major retailers. So that was the initial concept. Really, it was really just about branding and being able to sell the product, because at the time that was the immediate need, being able to get a sale.
And as you explained during our interview earlier, the organisation has certainly changed and evolved over that time, from the numbers of people who were part of the cooperative to right through to the functions and the functionality of your cooperative.
Yeah, that's right. So now we do all the packing for our growers. So we're ensuring that we have a central packing shed, which means that growers can invest their time in growing, and we take care of everything post-harvest. So we pack the bananas, we grade them, we determine the markets they go to, and we then pay them for that. So our farmers focus on farming and we focus on everything post the farm gate. Marketing as well. Integrated supply chain, direct relationships, value adding, and increasingly in the new regulatory framework, being able to assist our farmers with everything they need to do to keep doing what they're doing. So certainly has grown and developed a lot and continues to evolve as the business environment does.
And as you indicated to us earlier, even when people drop out of the cooperative, they really keep pace and stay with you. And maintain the momentum that the cooperative drives in your community.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we created a product, we created a demand for that product, and that enables people that are in the cooperative to come off the back of that. So especially with our direct supply relationships, we're taking product from the market floor out of the market, and that creates the opportunity for other people to come in and sell their product within that. The branding, the awareness of the brand, all of those things help everybody in the region, whether they're a member of the cooperative or not. So it's certainly, it's not ideal from the cooperative, but it is doing what it set out to do, which is to ensure a sustainable banana industry in Carnarvon.
To Brett Kelly now. Brett, you've had plenty of skin in the cooperative game, from sort of milk bottles to blueberries. How do you describe the cooperative advantage?
I think the advantage of having a synergy and a focus collectively, having profit share, not having external shareholders, I think those advantages in a cooperative, in particular, a farmer-based co-op, are very, very strong.
Now, clearly, there are a number of people in your organisations and as part of the cooperative that are very rugged individualists. How do you keep everybody? What's the challenge of keeping everybody on the same page and, broadly speaking, moving in the same direction?
Well, that's a really interesting question. I mean, there's two things to achieve. One is the commercial objectives, and that's basically about profitability. That's got to be the number one focus. The flip side to commercial objectives is what I call the psychology of communication, which is politics. So the more successful a cooperative becomes, the more political it becomes. That's not a bad thing, but the key to it is having a strategy that everybody understands and a plan. It's not that people plan to fail, they fail to plan. And a strategy has got to be based on a point of difference, a competitive edge that's not based on price, because anybody can sell $2 coins for $1 and go broke. So if you have those things in place, you have that focus, and you have that clear communication, it works very well.
And from your vantage point, do they do it better in some industries than others, or you're loath to identify down to commodities?
I think it really comes down to the people. I've learned over many, many years, there's 4 general rules that I think business co-ops fit into. Number one is people. You got to have the right people in the right jobs. Winners attract winners, losers attract losers. 2 is cost. You've got to keep your costs down all the time, even when you're profitable. 3 is focus. That is making sure that the stakeholders understand where you fit in the business, where the consumer is, where you're in the marketplace. Focus on that and don't be distracted. And the 4th one, as we just talked about, is strategy. Having a clear strategy with a story behind it that can sell your product at a premium.
To you now, Basil, your cooperative has been around for something like 70 years, so it's clearly undergone significant change from the original. But what has been the comparative, the collective advantage, which has really kept the Geraldton Fishermen's Co-op a very important and relevant part of the industry in your part of Australia?
Most definitely, it's our ethos of fishers working for the betterment of fishers and working together. I think that's been most important. But if I had to say one particular reason why we've been the biggest collective advantage, it'd have to be our size and the market share that ensures from that. So if I could paint a picture, because usually a picture tells a great story. I've got 2 of my favourite slides, and they're quite easy to explain. So if you think of a big fish, right, chasing a large school of very small fish, that's the first slide. And the second slide is exactly the same, but now all of a sudden the school of small fish are organised, they've got some leadership, they've got a common goal, and they've formed the silhouette of an enormous fish, and now are chasing the same fish that was chasing them in the first slide. So it's amazing what you can do when you have like-minded individuals trying to achieve something. If I can, and that's why, the size is important. I don't want to, if I can, I just flesh that out a little bit more to put some context behind this and why I believe that, the size is so important, or has been important for GFC. it's all primary industries have their own nuances, and ours isn't. Ours has got its own as well. So it is basically fisheries under quota managed. There are 6.5 million kilos, of which there are 4 major players, and our cooperative controls about 60% of that. So the other 3 major players have got the remainder. So that's the sandbox we're playing in, but we're actually playing a zero-sum game. So from that perspective, what I mean is for every kilo or every percentage share that we gain, someone loses, and vice versa. So in our cooperative, it's been very important not only to try and grow, but actually retain. And you could imagine the pressures and the competitive pressures that comes with that. So most certainly, that's in my opinion, that's where we're at.
And in the fishing sector, as we've seen over the last 20 or 30 years, you are almost constantly looking to measure the fishing effort and take people out of the industry to maintain the increased efficiency that you have in being able to catch, in your case, lobsters.
What do you mean take out? Sorry, Pete.
Oh, well, the industry, the sheer number of fishermen has decreased as your capacity and your productivity has increased. So it's not as if you're looking at creating lots of extra new members of your cooperative. It's probably the reverse.
True. A lot of that was forced about 10 years ago because of sustainability and economic reasons. So we actually had to halve the catch. So we're actually producing half as much as we were, say, 10 years ago. But yeah, so that just economies of scales between fishermen ended up meaning that the industry had to rationalise to survive. But yes, we are declining, like many other agri businesses around Australia. And
you've made the point that your cooperative shares resources as well as information. How does this contribute and add to value to your business?
Well, recently, yes, we going with the guiding principle number 6, which is cooperatives. Working with cooperatives, we're helping another cooperative in South Australia get themselves established, and we've been sharing resource. We are sharing resources with them and information, and actually doing some marketing of their lobsters. And from our member perspective, it helps our seafood basket, and it's been that's one way that we've been able to do it. And with our own members, obviously newsletters, communication. We funnel, or we cover 1,000 kilometres of coastline, so all the product gets funneled through one facility, so we can maintain quality, and the costs are shared across the whole length and breadth across all the members equally.
Doriana, as you mentioned in our interview, the Sweeter Banana Cooperative still has a very close working relationship with people who are no longer part of the cooperative, and you wear a number of hats. You share resources on a number of levels, including right up to the peak body for banana growing in Australia, the ABGC.
Yeah, that's right. And I guess for our members, the resource sharing comes to not having to buy or maintain, run packing equipment, and everybody having very unproductive packing sheds, where you can get those economies of scale of having one large packing shed that can operate at low cost. And in fact, we measure our profitability every single day based on our throughput, and because obviously it's a cooperative, but we're a business and we have to, number one, make money, and as Brett said, we have to keep an eye on costs. So we measure our productivity every single day, week, month, and we know our profit on a daily basis, if we made $5 or we made 500 for the co-op, and we can track all of that. That fine tuning, those economies of scale, really hard for individual farmers to focus on, because it's a very small part of what they do, whereas it's a big part of what we do, and it's our sole focus. So back to strategy and things like that, we have a goal of what our packing costs per carton are and what our wages per carton are, and we're revising that every year. And in fact, it's been coming down. So when everything else in the world is going up, it's coming down because we have that focus on that. So yeah, and it stops our growers having to fund all those resources themselves. They can just, bunches can leave the farm and they can focus on growing again.
Brett Kelly, does that explain the strength of long-standing cooperatives like Norco, who you've been involved in?
Yeah, I think you've got to stay completely focused, understanding the market share, as I said before, and not getting distracted. And as the business becomes more and more successful, you've got to work a lot harder on making sure you stay focused on the core of the business.
As I indicated at the outset, we are running a poll question tonight, and it's interesting, Melina Morrison, that the most popular responses at the moment about what attracts people and what they think is the most important aspect of working cooperatively is not perhaps the immediate dollar and tax benefits, but in fact pooling resources. Does that surprise you?
No, it doesn't surprise me, Pete, because as we've heard in abundance tonight in the stories from the panels, really cooperatives are about allowing independence to survive and thrive through cooperation. Cooperatives do allow for smaller and medium enterprises to get a competitive stake in a market that might ordinarily favour a single larger entrant. So in fact, cooperatives add in corporate diversity and competition to markets. They allow those smaller enterprises to operate as if they were larger, the scaling that Basil talked about, without giving up their own independence. So in fact, they kind of preserve competition in markets. Sometimes it's thought about the other way, but actually a lot of markets are unfairly monopolised by single larger players. And one thing that you see under cooperatives is hundreds or thousands of members and their many employees under one banner, but in fact they are a consortia of smaller enterprises.
Brett, what about the issue of minimising risk? That was also identified as a key player. And I'm sure you've had to manage a lot of issues, particularly with shelf life sensitive products. So does a cooperative have a particular strength in this area?
Yeah, I think so. But again, it comes down to the basic principle of how you do business. There's two ways. I suppose if you're a large multinational corporate, the board, the CEO will set a strategy. They'll sell that to the shareholders. They then may go and put a lot of capital in, set up infrastructure, and off they go. Now, if the strategy doesn't work or it takes too long to work if you're a smaller business, then you have the potential of bleeding to death through cash flow and profitability. We saw that very precisely with the debacle with Murray Goulburn. When you're a smaller business, a co-op, because there's a lower shareholder base, you've got to be really careful. So I think you need to stretch, lock in the profitability, usually by way of contract, then consolidate, then stretch again. It's only when you go past and outside of that focus that you risk putting the business at risk.
Doriana, in the example of growing bananas in the Gascoyne, in your part of Western Australia, some of the particular risks and exposures, of course, are weather related. The industry in the area is smashed every once in a while by really severe weather. Your cooperative has come up with a very unique and we'd have to say pretty successful approach to minimising risk.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things. The co-op itself, we set aside our own funds every year for our own self-insurance to ensure that we can operate in the event of a disaster, which obviously we had in 2015 with 100% of production lost for 18 months. And the industry itself has a fund with all the growers in Carnarvon contributing to that, and that every carton you produce, you pay a levy on. It's managed by the growers themselves, a grower board, and if there is a weather event that causes more than 15% damage, then people can claim from that fund based on their productivity. So it stops us asking for a handout. It gets growers back on their feet and able to plant again. And it's very well managed because it's managed by industry. They're the board are very careful about when it does pay out, and it's very fair. So it just goes to show that if you're all working together with a common goal, that you can do things which everyone says, you know, sell insurance for crops is impossible. Well, it can be done. It just needs the will.
Melina, is that an idea whose time should come in other parts of Australia? I mean, there obviously are a set of unique circumstances, particularly for banana growers in that neck of the woods. But is the idea of a mutual risk pool, could it be applied further, wider?
Well, isn't risk pooling a great idea, Pete? As we've just heard from Doriana, before speculative owners got into insurance, all insurance was mutualised. The idea of pooling risk is the idea of spreading or transferring risks. In the case of a farm, from the farm gate, I guess, spreading it across a group of owners, so you kind of share the burden of that risk. I think there's a lot of interest actually in farm mutuals at the moment, but it is quite a complex thing because insurance is based on modelling, actuarial models, and it really depends whether you're mutual or some other structure, whether you can actually have the capital base to provide protection against a risk event that's in the future, and that's all via modelling. With climate change, with other volatility in farmer incomes, increasingly markets could become uninsured. I think we're seeing that a lot. That puts farmers on a very tenuous basis. And in order for them to stay sustainable, we'll have to think of different options. But I think the other panellists have far more insights into the risks around their farm practices. But it's certainly an old idea that's making a resurgence in terms of how we provide solutions.
Basil, in every respect, I guess you could say that fishing is a pretty risky caper. How does your cooperative approach this issue, and how do you individual fishers cope with it, fund it?
So from a cooperative perspective, we've self-insured for the last 10 years against credit risk, because you imagine that we've been selling 90% export, so we're actually usually selling it on credit and expecting to get paid. So every time we try to get a premium, get some premium for it or work out a premium for it, it was just too expensive to do. So we decided 10 years ago to self-insure. So we've been doing that from that perspective. From all our members' perspective, basically they run their own businesses. We used to actually have a pooled boat insurance where we could do that for our members. And that worked pretty well back in its time, but the competitive forces of the big conglomerates made it impossible for us to compete with them. Right? But we have looked at it in the past, but other than that, we don't do any other self-insurance.
Look, we'll go to a question from our chat room that's been submitted. The question is interested, where does the panel believe the big opportunities for cooperative success in agriculture in Australia are right now, and what do producers need to bring to the table to make them succeed? Who'd like to have a crack at that for a starter? Doriana?
Sure. Well, I think the demise of the family-run farm is a really, really important issue. So with retailers increasingly, there's a few competitive sources. You've got retailers that increasingly prefer to buy from one or two big players. There's the varietal breeds of plants that are patented that producers, farmers can't get their hands on because they're too small. If you're not growing the product that retailers want, you're just not going to be in that space. So I think that family farms, horticulture, such an opportunity for people to group together, engage with people that develop varieties, buy varieties, and then be able to play on that big field, be able to supply the big retailers, because 80% of Australians still buy all their fruit and vegetables from the major supermarkets. So if you're not in that space, it's very hard to compete. You're left with the bottom end. And as we've seen through COVID, when hospitality dropped away, so did a lot of that demand for, that lower end product. So I think, and what you have to bring to the table is just a willingness to have a vision and work together for common goals, which is your farm to be profitable and sustainable, and working with a cooperative. It's a lot easier to do that working with others and trying to take that on by yourself.
Well, the point about innovation that you make is a very good one, and perhaps arguably West Australia's greatest gift to agricultural innovation was the development of the pink lady apple, which has obviously taken another part of horticulture by storm. A product of good old government-backed R&D down there in the southwest. Phenomenal. Brett Kelly, what do you see when you gaze out on the horizon in the cooperative sense?
I just see huge opportunity, in particular with what's happened in recent times with the COVID-19. The consumer is looking for self-sustainability. They're looking for fresh. I mean, our whole heritage of our country was built on farming. The credibility of farmers is stronger than anything. So if you put the right story, and basically, the truth is your strongest argument. If you put the story together of a farmer-based cooperative producing a product right across the sector, and you give that story, you market it, it will go, it will work, it will support. Australians will support that. So I think even more so now, as we come out of this situation that we've all been in, there's going to be a huge demand. And a lot of people that want freshness and self-sustainability, they're going to be going back into the workforce, they're going to be flat out, but they are going to be focused on looking for that Australian farmer-produced product.
Melina, cooperatives were very much a part of and have been very much a part of the Australian agricultural scene virtually since day one. Why did they become unfashionable? Why did they, in some large areas of farming, did they become unsexy?
I think they were victim to a bigger trend, especially during the 80s and 90s, which had to do with corporatisation. The idea that there was perhaps value capital that was locked up in business models, including cooperatives that needed unlocking, unleashing, and that was going to drive increased value by bringing outside investment into businesses. So we did see some of our most treasured Australian brands, food processing brands, go the way of many other demutualisations. Some of those great corporate names like AMP are kind of not the great businesses of before. But I mean, there can be a lot of reasons driving it, but certainly there was a push to change those business models. Some of it in food processing, in agriculture, had to do with changes in labour costs, the input costs, and competing in a global market where you've got to compete on all of those costs. But what's really interesting now with COVID is that government and citizens, consumers and farmers and other stakeholders are really interested in this idea of reanimating manufacturing, for example, locally owned manufacturing, food processing. It's almost going back to what we had before because, sovereign capacity, supply chain certainty, and what Brett and Doriana have just been saying about clean, green, paddock to plate desires by consumers are pushing the trend in the other way.
provenance is certainly, to the fore. As I said, we're running a poll in today's cooperative conversations, and the poll question is, for Australian farmers, what do you think is the most appealing aspect of farming in a cooperative structure? And the choices very quickly are sharing knowledge, tax benefits, risk management, pooling resources, economies of scale, social values, and capital raising. Click on the poll in the live chat to the right of this stream to select your answer. And I guess that brings us to one of the most frequently asked questions about co-ops. How on earth do you corral all these passionate, rugged individuals in the one direction? Doriana, you had some great stories about the battles in the early days of the Sweeter Banana Cooperative to get that. How did you wrangle all those free spirits in a way that you could get where you needed to go?
I think Brett outlined it. You have to have a strategy. So getting everybody engaged on what that strategy is and why you're taking these steps. You know, what you're, not just the overall, you know, not just a motto or a mission statement. You know, real numbers, KPIs, things that can be measured, goals we have, and the steps we're going to take to get there, and getting everybody engaged and agreeing to that. Those high level goals is the first thing, and then obviously communicating that and updating that, and of course working on keeping your costs low and returns high and all of those things to give your growers value. And then when something goes wrong, because things do, they understand when it's part of a bigger strategy that this has happened. And you know, with it, we've had tough times where we've taken steps to do something different and we've had big learning curves, but we've always had that end goal in mind, and the growers will stick with it when they can see there's a result at the end of it.
Basil, your cooperative members obviously needed to make a big leap of faith to accept that lowering catch limits could ultimately be the pathway to some commercial advantage. There must have been a lot of very careful planning about how that discussion was rolled out, and obviously some robust discussions.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, GSC had to take the lead or the initiative on this and try and corral all the troops and meaning all the stakeholders around industry to reach a position that would get us through the situation. And we quickly identified time was what we needed. And so we lobbied everyone we could and got industry together and decided to extend the season, as well as foregoing the catch during the closure. So we had a 6-week closure, and we are very supply and demand driven. We understand that most of our product is exported, and for it to be sitting in freezers and would be the wrong move. So that was the way we went. But it was a credit to obviously to our CEO who worked very hard on this. Matt had done an exceptional job, but these things don't happen without ministerial agreement. So you've got to have those relationships. You've got to be able to have that trust. And GSC being 60% is seen as a leader in the industry, and you know, a minister, if he knows you've got 60% of the industry on board, is more receptive to making a decision. And to his credit, the minister was awesome. The State Minister, Peter Tinley, was absolutely awesome. He made it happen in a timely manner.
And look, in a sense, you were ahead of a lot of other areas of farming in that by making those tough decisions, you were then acknowledged with, you know, marine stewardship recognition, and which opens and guaranteed you access to markets in a way that I guess was a little bonus on top of any increase in returns.
True, absolutely. One thing about the GFC and the board, I would say that we've been through a similar thing during SARS, right, where you become a price taker if you start, you know, if you have to produce product and have it sitting on the shelf, because then you can't differentiate your product. And our product is one of the few products that's worth more in its natural life state, right, than it is if we value add it. And so we understood that, you know, this was the only, we needed to get back to the closest normality that we had as soon as possible. And this was the only mechanism we thought that we could do it. It gave fishers time to plan, but it wasn't, I mean, it was great by our members, because members, you know, the majority of our members do look to GSC for leadership, and if they've got trust in the management team and oversight of the board, then they tend to go along with the decisions made. And it's a credit to industry, because they made this decision within 2 weeks of the closure.
Brett Kelly, you've obviously been involved in one or two of these stoushes when it comes to going along the cooperative journey. What are the best tips to avoid the argy-bargy and when there are really fundamental disagreements about the direction that the co-op management believes that, you know, they need to take, their members need to take?
I mean, it's always great to have passion, and people do get passionate when they believe in something. I've always believed that when you run into situations, you react. Everyone's allowed to react, and then you adapt and overcome. But I think, again, as we've talked about, having a clear strategy, having a plan, having consistent, precise communication. And the other thing, of course, is that, look, talk is cheap. It is about the bottom line result. At the end of the day, that's what I've always lived by in terms of business. So when that profit and loss comes out on a monthly basis, you want a situation where your members are getting profitability through their farm gate price, and you're getting an asset appreciation of the business. So I think if you're sharing the story together, you're communicating, and the measurement is showing that all the talk, all the hard work is reflecting in the result that you're achieving, then you'll keep everybody together with that focus.
Look at some of the other wider benefits, the community benefits, and you've all, I guess, in one sense or another, spoken about some of the add-on advantages of cooperatives, in that it really is a community builder, and it builds resilience and strength, particularly when you're tested in those tough times. I guess from a surrounding community point of view, Doriana, nothing tests you like a dramatic event like a cyclone or floods or fires and so forth. Do cooperatives necessarily help you through that those sort of testing times?
Yeah, I think it's you have a reference point. There's someone to talk to there that is going through the same situation as yourself, and obviously we can help coordinate efforts for recovery, clean up, those types of things, and then ongoing, keeping that communication, I guess, keeping the spirits up whilst you're in that downtime until production ramps up again. It's giving people, you know, a focus on that future. So yeah, so definitely in practical ways and physical ways, but also just the fact that you can come together as a group and be sharing that experience. You're all in the same boat together. And I think I said before, farming can be pretty lonely. Generally, it's, you know, husband and wife team, and you're on your own. You don't have a lot of colleagues like people do in offices and other businesses. And that sense of community you get from all being somewhere to get something together. So, you know, when it's good, it's great because you're sharing in success. But I think it's even more important when things aren't so great, that you're able to share that with, you know, other people in the same situation as yourself.
And I guess, Brett, no commodity sector has hogged more headlines and had more column inches written about it than the dairy game over the last 10 years or so. I guess it's important for people in the communities that supply organisations like Norco to know that they're all in it together.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the strength of that synergy is second to none. But you know, one of the key things now is that the days of just being good at farming are no longer there. I mean, it goes without saying, quality has to be the best farm practice, but you're actually in a retail business. So on the farm, you have to understand the consumer, you have to understand the retailer, you have to understand the wholesaler, you have to understand the processor. You're selling a product. It's a little bit like if you're developing a major shopping centre. You can't just sign the first person up who wants to sign a lease for a shop. You have to understand their business enough to know that the rent they're going to need to pay you will make the business sustainable in the long run. So I think collectively together in the co-op model, you have that strength of that unity, and without having, not that there's anything wrong with external shareholders, but the moment you bring in external shareholders, like in other types of models, then cost of business like Farmgate is seen as a cost of business. And at the end of the day, we need to always keep the focus that only from profit comes a higher Farmgate. From that Farmgate, it gives our farmers the opportunity to reinvest and have a sustainable future for generations to come.
And look, in terms of challenges, nothing's been more fundamental than the real hurdles that have been thrown in front of farmers and food producers this year through the pandemic. Basil, for such a business that is so, as you say, export focused, what have the last 6 months produced for you, and how have you been able to be flexible enough to pivot around and try and sort of soften some of those blows?
To sell 6 million kilos locally, we knew it was not going to happen overnight. But we made sure that whatever we could, especially with the correction in price, that we try to get into the local community and try and get the consumer to accept the product more. So we're offering free delivery of product coming up to Easter and through Easter, and we had staff delivering product to people's houses at prices that we achieved 10 years ago. So, you do whatever you have to when adversity hits you. But fortunately for us, we also understood that we still needed to move the product as an export. So then we started to lobby government, and we needed federal assistance, and BCCM was very helpful with that, with the IFAM grants, which subsidised some of the freighters so that we could get our fishermen back on the water and catching the product at much lower prices. So we've been doing everything we can, and including looking at ways to get our investors who are vested in the company, our members who are invested in the company to invest more going forward.
And Doriana, I guess one of the upsides of all these challenges is that it does seem as though everybody from consumers right through to policymakers and politicians now have a stronger sense of and an appreciation towards the farming community for what they've been able to continue to do when other parts of the economy have slowed up or stopped.
Yeah, it's been fantastic to be recognised as an industry and to be seen as key and valuable. When quite often when you do a survey and it says what occupation are you in, agriculture hasn't even been listed. So and it's not valued. So I think that government has stepped up, and as Melina said, I think manufacturing's got to be the next thing, so we can become more self-sufficient in all things manufacturing. We made a policy decision to buy Australian, so our packaging is manufactured in Australia, which has cost us a little bit financially, but we felt that we're WA and our focus is local, and that decision proved to be very good for us because we didn't have any interruptions to the supply chain. But I know for a lot of industries, it's been really, really hard, and I think there's a long way to go in terms of getting Australian manufacturing back, and hopefully co-ops can be part of that.
And differentiating yourself in a market with what most people would regard as a fairly generic product, a banana, has been one of the strengths of your cooperative. I mean, you set out to create a market for a banana that didn't really have a place in the market.
Yeah, that's right. It was the banana that nobody wanted to buy. It was the lower cost one. It was the cheap one. It was seen as inferior, and we set out to completely turn that on its head. And we've been able to achieve that premium pricing and recognition as premium banana. So that's been a huge success of the co-op, and it's why we're still farming, because our small scale means that in lots of ways we can't compete with the larger businesses in tropical areas that have free rainfall. We pay for water, so we had to be premium, and we had to be able to get better returns to our farmers. So that's been a big part of the success of the co-op, along with the quality and everything else that we've been able to do and accessing those markets. So it all comes together. I think, as Brett said, if our farmers are focused on farming, and the cooperative helps with everything else about understanding the supply chain, and that's why it works.
Brett, you made the point that farmer-owned is a very big part of your messaging. How important, from your perspective, is marketing and being able to, scale this into a co-op?
I think it's critical, and I think the strongest point again is, as I said earlier, the truth is the strongest argument. And the co-ops that I've been involved with, the key marketing strategy that I've pushed is the 100% Australian farmer owned, and the story behind it, because the consumer, I mean, we're all very busy in our lifestyles, and people, have got bills to pay, put kids through school. But you know what? The consumer will pay a fair price for a quality product if they know the story behind it. And in particular, if they know that, you might pay a premium and maybe a premium product, but that extra margin is going back into Australian farmers. So I think the whole farmer story, I mean, it was the word I would use the most around the office: farmer, farmer, farmer. That's what it's all about.
Yes, indeed. Basil, the rock lobster product is obviously, delicious, and it's one of the things that people aspire to, an aspirational kind of meal. How do you scale in a business like that? Is it difficult or more easier under a co-op?
Oh, I think it's easier, but it is easier. But we've got to really understand that to scale, it does cost. It doesn't come free, right? But as a cooperative, you can allocate resources, especially if you're well funded, right? And you can invest in R&D to facilitate innovation. You can build, a great team of employees. Right? You've got that ability, and you can really focus on what you want to be and how you're going to get there. And going back to what Doriana and Brett were saying, I mean, if you've got a well-documented strategic plan, where you with the clear direction, and a few strong pillars, you can actually achieve that. But easier within a cooperative structure, I believe, because the members are vested.
We have been talking tonight about all the significant factors that go into making these cooperatives a success. We're interested in getting your input. We have a poll question running tonight for Australian farmers. What do you think is the most appealing aspect of farming in a cooperative structure? Follow the links at the side of our live stream tonight. Get involved and give us the feedback so we know that we're on the right track. Melina, I guess you've seen heaps of excellent examples of primary producers scaling and succeeding by the structure. When it works well, or where does it work well, and is it different to other business structures?
Well, we have heard some great examples tonight of scaling, and really I think the story is that when smaller businesses want to do something that they could only do if they were larger or they cooperate, then the cooperative model is a great model. I'm sorry about the echo that's happening. I don't know if it's my end, but I'll keep going. But cooperative is a corporate vehicle, and it has to be well managed, just like any other company. What's really important is that the cooperative decides what it's going to return in benefit in any given year and what it needs to retain to invest in its future strategy. And I think when farmers or producers in any particular agricultural sector can do that collectively, it becomes a really powerful force. I mean, one of the main things that we see as a benefit of scaling is access to export markets that really do demand economies of scale, as well as being able to produce a certain volume that allows you to get a foothold in a global market and set a price. And we've seen that, for example, with Geraldton.
It's often said in this space and in lots of others, we're only limited by our imagination and our capital. And obviously, when it comes to capital raising, there are very important issues confronting every farm organisation, no matter how it's structured. Brett, is capital raising easier or more difficult for a cooperative? What sorts of savings can be made through that collective advantage?
Capital is always an important part of any business, but again, in a cooperative model, you've got to be really careful. Like if you, as I mentioned earlier, if you were to go down the path of, say, an IPO and you want to float a brand, to do a successful IPO, you've got to have a history of profitability. You've got to have a management team integral to that profitability, and you've got to have the potential to make a lot more profitability. Plus, also, if you bring in external shareholders, as I mentioned, quite rightfully, they'll look at the farm gate as a cost of business, and they want to bring that down. Whereas the farmer lives and dies by the farm gate, they want the profit to go into the farm gate. So I think debt in a cooperative should be driven by profitability, such as it is in any other business. The ownership and the shareholding stays with the actual members. History in cooperatives, unfortunately, in Australia, as we know, 99% of them in the past go broke. Why do they go broke? When they are doing really well, they pay themselves too much. When they're not doing really well, they pay themselves too much. So you've got to have the ability to reinvest, grow the profitability, and make sure that flows back in. So capital, I think, in my opinion, is best driven by profitability, by debt with a long-term strategy.
Doriana, you've spoken about an almost constant need for capital raising for the kinds of innovations that you believe are really important to the success of the Sweeter Banana Cooperative.
Yeah, and I think it's important, as Brett said, looking at the long term, that you make sure that the growers of today aren't paying disproportionately for the assets of the growers of tomorrow. So you do it slowly, and you invest. You don't pay off your loans in 1 year just because you can. You've got to have a keen eye that you still need to return benefits to members, and that whatever asset you've purchased is going to be useful for the life of the co-op over the next 10 years, and keeping that fair. When the co-op first began, we had investors, our members invested in the form of loans. These days they would be cooperative capital units, so that's another way of doing it. And obviously we use the cooperative loan structure, which enables that capital repayment to be a tax deduction, which is an incredible way of building capital that's not available to any other business sector. And then you can, once you start to grow your asset base, as you say, each year we determine how much profit we will retain and how much we'll rebate to our members, and that changes with the needs of the co-op, the needs of the members, and it's worked really well because everyone understands that that's the goal, and that's what we're doing, and it's proportionate. People get back what they put in, so it's about being fair as well.
And Basil, what about what's the situation for you in terms of capital raising? I mean, very similar. Much the same sort of boat.
Yeah, it's similar to what Doriana's saying, but I mean there are a few ways to get access to capital. One is from shares. So we do have we've got 25% of our members who are 100% shareholding. So we've gone through a stage where when we pay a final distribution, we actually, if they're lower than a certain amount, we make sure that a percentage of their distribution goes into shares, so that we're balancing the higher shareholders with the new entrants that we've had, say, over the last 10 years. The other way, obviously, is retaining reserves and to strengthen your balance sheet when times are good, as Brett said, and that allows you to leverage using cooperative loans. which we have been utilising for many years, and they've been. I'd class that as a competitive advantage that I would like to tell my competitors that, so they all know now.
And I guess, Melina, as cooperatives, as more cooperatives work together, the lessons that the Geraldton fishermen or the Northern New South Wales dairy farmers or the banana growers at Carnarvon, those kinds of lessons and those kind of approaches to how people can go around about capital raising get shared around and make it a little bit easier than it is often for farmers.
Yes, there's still a lot of education to do when it comes to cooperative capital. Lawyers don't learn what cooperative structures are. Accountants don't have to do cooperative capital units as part of accounting degrees. So also the kind of professional ecosystem around cooperatives needs some education as well. By and large, though, cooperatives are excellent vehicles for raising capital. They're very flexible. And as you've heard in the examples just now, there are various ways of raising debt, member shares and equity models where you can bring funding in from members as well as non-members without trading your cooperative business model, without giving away influence or ownership in your cooperative. So they are indeed a flexible corporate model, and they're designed to hold and to manage assets. I think we could all do with more education to think about how we're going to deploy capital, because it's deployed for different reasons in a cooperative. Being a member benefiting business form, the members decide how much capital they need and what price they're prepared to pay for that capital, but it's always to generate the mutual benefit to all of the members.
Yeah, we've got a couple of questions that have come in the course of our discussion tonight. And the first one is, and the question's open to all of you, are there situations where you think it would be better for the business if you were not part of a cooperative?
Go, Brett.
Look, I think only if you don't have the right fit for the cooperative. I mean, being in a cooperative, you're a team player. And it's a situation where you own the actual company, the assets collectively, whether you're a large operator or a small operator, and you all are working together to build that business and the future and sustainability. So if you don't have the right, I suppose, attitude that you don't want to play in a situation where you're working together collectively, then you shouldn't be in a cooperative. I think otherwise, though, a cooperative is a great vehicle for farmers to get together and build their business.
Yeah, I would concur with that and just say that there is sometimes a short-term, anyone can make a short-term gain by stepping out. There's always people hovering that are, and Basil would probably have this all the time, that are willing to offer you a price that's better for that week, that month. But in the long term, you're always going to be better in the cooperative, because no one's going to look after the business like members who have a vested interest. So yeah, the short-termism is it's a quick fix, but for the long term, go the co-op every time.
Yeah, what do you say, Basil?
Yeah, concur with my colleagues there. Most definitely. To me, I can't see any other vehicle. I think everyone should be in a cooperative. If any small business, I mean, there are reasons why it works so well, and the collective wisdom and the collective grouping of individual businesses makes so much sense if it's economies for scale, or if it's for the benefit of the community, or what for social aspects as well. Most definitely.
But I really have enjoyed this roaming discussion. We have gone from one side of the country to the other, and across obviously a whole range of different food groups and farming operations. I hope you've enjoyed it as well, wherever you are watching this in Australia. Cooperative Conversations is part of the Cooperative Farming, a new online education resource for farmers. Jump online at conversations.coopfarming.coop to find out more. You can also join the private Facebook group for farmers, fishers and foresters to ask more questions, more follow-up questions, and get information from the cooperative farming team. Search for the cooperative farming on Facebook. Once again, thank you so much to Doriana in Carnarvon in WA, Basil, who's just down the coast a bit. In fact, I think coming to us tonight from sunny Fremantle, but normally based at the Geraldton Fishers Co-op, and Brett Kelly over here on the eastern seaboard together with Melina Morrison. We really appreciate all your time, your input, your experience and your expertise. It's been fantastic. It's been a great conversation. Big thanks to Doriana again for her interview a little earlier, really unpeeling the story of the Sweeter Banana Cooperative and the trials and tribulations that keep everybody over there on their toes. So it's great. Now, what we want you to do, thank you for your input tonight. We roll on next time with an interview series where we talk to Natalie Browning, who is part of a farming family in WA, and she's also the Deputy Chair of CBH, Australia's largest cooperative and a leader in the Australian grain industry, really from paddock right through to port. So they've got operations that extend right along the value chain. So the discussion with Natalie is going to be interesting, and we will be then teasing out more issues as we have done tonight in a roundtable discussion after that. So we hope you can join us. That's coming up in August, followed by the roundtable discussion, sharing knowledge for the better. The details of those episodes, you can get all the details of our past episodes tonight and the remainder of the series. Go to conversations.coopfarming.co, and remember, all these are available now that have been live streamed. They will be available on demand going forward. So thanks once again. It's been a great discussion tonight. We hope you've enjoyed it wherever you are across Australia. And the main message, of course, is stay safe.